We will go ahead and get this started. It looks like, according to the electronic satellite, we're a little bit early, but what the heck? I'd like to welcome all of you to our very much highly anticipated Zoom with people who have, at one point or another, officiated the Olympics. In particular the 84 and the 96 Olympics. And we also have at least one person who had also officiated at another. Eric Zemper had also officiated. No, Eric, you were in attendance at the 2012 Olympics.
I
So,
was there as an official, an IAAF International Technical Official.
okay, so you have had the ability to work in three Olympics. And I don't know if David
Yeah,
Katz is on this, but he has
he's
had,
probably got more than I do.
yeah, I believe he's at six.
Ooh.
And so what I was intending to do was just have people chat about their experiences and let things just go where they go. And I hope that that is something that will work for everybody. I'm going to share some things here, though. You let me know if this is up. Can everybody see this black and white photo?
Can you make it larger, please?
I am doing my best.
All we've
Um,
got is a list.
oh, you don't have the photo up.
Nope.
Huh.
I've got
Okay.
a list. I can't.
Okay, well, let me see what I can do here. Is this up now?
No, it's just
Same list.
picture of a list.
Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and turn. Is Paul Bowden shot on? Paul had sent some photos of the torch relay that had come through LA. And it's very interesting to see what vehicles there were then and who all was uh, involved right there immediately with the torch. One of the pictures that he had sent showed a very famous singer, somebody you all recognize. He wore his hair long all the time and would, use a headband. Does anybody happen to know who I'm talking about?
Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson was riding along in the torch relay. Yeah, it was fun to see that. I took my boy to the 98 Olympic torch relay, the Olympics that were held in Salt Lake. The torch relay came through Oregon, and so that was fun to see.
That would have been '02, Scott.
Oh, two. Yeah, you're right. Thank you very much. Um, but let's go ahead with anybody who had been at the 84 Olympics. Dee, I think you're on this, aren't you?
Want me to start?
Sure.
So keep in mind that the United States hadn't hosted an Olympic Games for 52 years. So there was a whole lot that needed to be pulled together in terms of officiating, I'm going to say protocol, procedures, training, those sorts of things. We received notification by snail mail. If I recall correctly, my letter came in January. We were required to send fingerprints, a fingerprint, and measurements for uniforms. There was a lot of conversation about the uniforms, especially, I think in a real sense of pride. I was listening to men that were talking about it. And so one of the things that happened upon arrival and when we eventually went to pick up our uniforms is that when I stood in line and they asked what size skirt I wanted, I declared size 18. Excuse me, I declared size 8, and the woman looked at me and said, the smallest size we have is 18. So I think in the tailoring, they took off about 2.5 inches on each side of that skirt, and it worked. What it did for me, though, is I think it really put in perspective that men's and women's track and field was at the end of the Olympics in '84. And I hadn't pondered how many officials there were from all the other venues. So it was a great humbling experience. And I felt pretty lucky that I had a skirt that I could wear. We were given a choice of whether we wanted a ticket for the opening ceremonies or the closing ceremonies, days after we had arrived and had gone through training and an inordinate amount of marching. Now, I sent you a picture, Scott, and I was in a crew of all men. I was easy to pick out because I was wearing a skirt. And you think about what difference does it make? What difference does marching make? Well, we had not been marching in meets that we had been in prior to this time. And now you're on television. And I don't know how many of us had pondered television, but our leaders knew this was important. So it seemed to me we practiced a lot of marching. And in the high jump, we were at the opposite end of the track. So we basically got 100 meters to march. And the first time you come marching in, there's probably 80,000 people in the Coliseum. And you ponder that a little bit. And then you focus on staying in step because you realize they're really not paying attention to you unless you do something ridiculous. So sense of presence, knowledge, we likely all had a great sense of knowledge, but how we looked to the rest of the world was important to the rest of the world, but very important to the United States. I worked both the men's final and the women's final. And I looked to check. You can see that in this crew, here we have 7 officials. And I think that's somewhat consistent. Our numbers haven't gone up and down very much, like some of the other officials, areas of such as umpires, that sort of thing.
This
Fine.
Dee, this looks to be that you're going toward the torch at this
Yes.
point.
Correct.
Okay.
So when we came out of the tunnel, we got to walk all along the home, I guess we'd call it the home stretch. Exactly. Well, I guess I could say only probably one more thing and let others chime in. So for whatever reason, a poster from the Arts Festival attracted my attention. And I didn't realize going into the Olympic Games that music and art especially are a part of all Olympic Games. And Los Angeles had an enormous arts festival. And so I asked how I might get a poster. And I was told that they weren't for sale. You'd need to go down to the Art Center in downtown Los Angeles. So I requested an opportunity to do that when I wasn't officiating. And they took me on a school bus down there. And I bartered with Olympic pins to get one of the physical prizes from the Olympic Games in '84. One of the things, in addition to my ring, they probably are the 2 things I enjoy the most. So I got a bus drive down there by myself, got the poster, and came back, and it's in my home.
That's a hoot of a story.
God,
How far away, just a minute, please. Dee, how far away were you housed? Weren't you on the US UCLA campus?
We were, I was at USC,
Oh, so right by,
correct.
hard by, yeah. Go ahead. Who's
Hi, that was me, Jim Hanley. I got started a couple of years before with the LAOOC, and a lot of the things I got your email about a screen share, and I put together a slideshow on some of these things, but I maybe misunderstood. Maybe I was supposed to send it to you. So I don't know if I can do that, if I can screen share, if I can send it to you. But you can see
let's
the
just
buses.
let me
and the
go ahead
color
and put
coding.
down. You should be able to screen share, so try it.
Uh, just click on share. Oh, importantly, how to get out of it. Shoot.
So you should be able to go down to the bottom and click on share and have that pull up. There we go.
Okay, there's one. Okay. I got a phone call from the head of the IAAF Race Walking Committee, Bob Bowman, about 1981, after the flag was claimed by Mayor Tom Bradley, who was a quarter miler at UCLA. And Bowman said, make sure I have all my registration up and apply and dot my I's and cross my T's, because he wanted me to have an important job. So anyway, my job was to be part of the race walking liaison. I had just a little background. I had invented a lap counting system where you put, let's see if I can get the rest, where you put the number of laps to go up at the top. Okay, here we go. Here we go. And this was about 1965. And the advantage of this lap counting system is that anybody could do it and not make a mistake. In the past 100 years, you'd write down the lap times and the referee would fight over what was what. So the thing that I invented was to have a number of laps to go and have the times. This way, any official could come in and they could tell the athlete the laps remaining, and they could check the math, like this is 10 minutes for each 2.5 kilometers. So anyway, that's kind of what they wanted me to organize. And I got really, really involved. He called me up and said I was going to be involved in Olympics. I thought he was joking. And then I started getting calls from all these folks in the LAOC that I was seeing on TV, and asked me questions like, well, where are we going to have this race? And oh, shoot, I'm off again, darn it. I just clicked myself off.
I can see your screen is up.
I want to share again. I don't know how to do it.
Your screen is up, Eric, Jim. So you're sharing
can't.
now.
I can't see it.
Yeah,
Geez.
but your screen is up. So
I can't click on share. I want to get back to the pictures. Well, I may have to do it without the pictures. We had every contingency you could think of. We knew what to do. The big problem was the course immediately. First question I get from one of these guys is, where are we going to have the race? And I thought, oh my gosh, I better get back to Bowman. So the big thing was the course. We had a guy named Hal McWilliams who had 200 contingency plans. You couldn't just do what you normally do. You had what you did impacted hundreds of other people, impacted the whole city. There were all kinds of contingencies and requirements. For example, I wish I could get this on. How do I get back to screen share? This is nutty.
well, you should be able to go down to the bottom because yours is still up. It's still on the screen. So you still are in that mode.
Here's some, okay, here we go. Ah. We wanted very badly to have the race start and finish in the Coliseum. That wasn't an easy thing to do. Because of my lap counting system, we wanted to have the lap counters and the split timing at the same point in the course. So we started in the Coliseum, came out, got on this loop. Man.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
everybody was involved. The city of LA, this was given out by everybody in the school district to every kid. I can't get this to work. I just can't get it to work. Anyway, everything was done with security in mind.
Jim, try exiting out of the screen share and then going back in with the picture you want.
I got a whole slug of them showing the security, the color codes. all
Did
kinds
you
of
hear that,
stuff.
Jim?
I don't know how to do.
Try ending your screen share and then beginning again.
This brought me back to the original checking of the meeting again.
Go to the top of the screen. It should be a red bar that says stop sharing.
One of the elements of the race walk that I'll add while Jim's trying to do that was that we ended up walking in a very interesting community, and we co-opted all the kids and brought them t-shirts so that they could help us keep everybody off of the race course. So, and the kids had a great time in the community, and it really brought the race walk. What made it special was it brought the race walk to the Los Angeles community, to people who would otherwise not get a chance to see any part of the Olympics.
Lori, what neighborhood? What was the makeup of that neighborhood?
Well, it was the outside, just outside of the Coliseum, but it was in a very low income area. And the kids were wonderful. And they got excited about participating. And what we just asked them to do is make sure nobody got on the course. And the kids were awesome at doing that.
And we
That's
learned that from, believe it or not, an Olympic marathon umpires meeting. And it was the best meeting I ever attended in terms of how to use psychology to help control crowds. And we also gave them little flags, welcome to LA. And Lori was a genius, by the way. During the trials, we were a little bit bored because there weren't so many walkers. He was with the lap counters. I was at the end of the loop, and I had to tell the people to leave or not leave to go back to the Coliseum. So we had all kinds of backups. The first plan was using walkie-talkies. He's going to tell me who goes off the course. We were also keeping track there at the end of the loop, kind of not letting people know about that. And in other words, we had backups on backups and contingencies. This thing was planned for 3 years. We had actually an agreement with a private homeowner right across the street from where Lori was. And if all hell broke loose, they were going to use the phone to call down to where I was. I was at Exposition in Catalina. He was down at the just before Western, which we couldn't extend the loop for. We weren't allowed to have the loop past Western no matter what. We had already closed for the major north-south streets in that area, Vermont and Normandy, and they insisted we couldn't go farther than Western. Now, this created a huge problem since the maximum loop size back then was 5K. And we wanted to have a 2K, 2.5K. And then we had signs with the multiple of everything. Anyway, during the trials, I got a Lori story. I got 2 Lori stories, which are actually that I really wanted to talk about. During the trials, I was keeping a pace chart at the end of the loop, and I said, "Hey, Lori, wake up. The leader's going to come by at 23 minutes and 2 seconds or whatever it was." And of course, he knew all that stuff anyway. So then a few laps later, he said, "Hey, Jim, wake up. The leader's gonna come by at so-and-so." So we had pace charts. That race was wired. We knew where everybody was at all time. Now, during the big problem that we had during the actual Olympics was how are we going to get the signal? Again, we didn't have the technology that we did now. We had watches going out to the course. So Lori had the group of lap counters, and across the street from him was Bill Hickman, who had the split timers. A big criteria that we wanted to have was the split timers and the lap counters at the same spot. Believe it or not, that had never been done before. The IAAF did not want it to. They had a rule that said your minimum loop size could be 5K. Nobody wanted it that long, especially the police and the city, because we'd have to close down another major artery. So we were able to actually get the rule changed. And that was a $325 phone bill that month, lobbying everybody in Europe. So here's the other story. Lori.
So Jim,
and I,
before you continue, Lori, introduce yourself, will you please?
Yeah, I'm Laurie Robertson, and I
In the
had
Pacific
a role
Northwest.
with Bill Hickman of making sure that the lap counting and the timing were done according to Jim's direction.
Lori,
I then was also an umpire at the games, and then played a role in '96 of having us being in charge of the umpires for the race walk portion.
So we had to get the watches out to the course, and Lori and Bill Hickman and I had a special bus just for us to go into the tunnel of the Coliseum. We were going to each start 2 stopwatches. Well, that's why God gave us 2 hands to start 2 stopwatches. And then we're going to hop on the bus and go to the course. I can't see my pictures, so I'm sorry, but I had a special armband that allowed us to get through security without waiting on line. We had a bus with a pink stripe along the side with stars that allow us to get into the Coliseum to go through the tunnel. So we get in there, or we were about to get in there, and the guy at the security to the tunnel says, "You can't take that bus in here." Says you don't have the proper credentials. Okay. So at this point, I went up to the bus and I talked to this guy. I said, "Look, in 2 hours, we're going to have 1 billion people watching the biggest race ever in the history of the city. We have to take these timing things out to the course. What do you suggest I do?" Just go ahead. The same thing happened to the chief of security a couple of days later. So we got the watches started. We had our other backup, which was the walkie-talkie out to the clock, marathon style. That was started. Everything worked great. No problems. Okay, now I have to tell you another story real quick. And this was nearly a disaster. Again, totally planned in every way for years and years. Every contingency, we knew what to do if a terrorist landed a helicopter in the middle of the course. I mean, it was meeting after meeting after meeting. So we got to watch the races in the Coliseum, we being the lap counting crew. And all of a sudden, this is at about 2 p.m. The race is going to be at 5 p.m. And all of a sudden, a guy comes running in screaming, "They're tearing up the course. They're tearing up what?" So we were told, no matter what happens, don't ever run anywhere. I, along with Bob Hickey, sprinted from the Coliseum to the corner of Menlo and Exposition, where a city employee with a bulldozer and a crew was starting to tear up the course. I told him, "What are you doing? You can't do this." And I was in uniform, and I had Bob Hickey with me, who was a police officer, and he says, I have my orders. Well, the city, again, every agency of the city got involved. And he had his orders, and he tore up a corner of the most accurately measured course in Olympic history. It was measured with lasers over and over again, and the IAAF certifiers certified it. And he tears up a corner of the course. He wasn't going to stop. We basically threatened to arrest him. Thank goodness I had a policeman next to me, Bob Hickey. And nobody hears about this stuff. So good old Hal McWilliams and his wheel. There was a street on that map, which I had up there before that I can't show you. It's a rectangle. The north side exposition was two sides of a railroad track. Well, the two sides of a rectangle are exactly the same. So Hal got out his wheel and he took the opposite side of the rectangle, and it was exactly the same distance. Everything was the same, and nobody knew it till a couple of years ago when I first told the story. There were a lot of post
Well, they had
calls.
a very resourceful group of people. They were lucky to have.
Yeah, it was nuts. Anyway, Bob Bowman, when he first got me involved, said that the Europeans have all said that the Americans could not put on a race of this calendar. We didn't have the experience. We didn't have the know-how. We couldn't do it. I suspect you guys in Eugene had the same talk from these folks before the World Championships that you put on, which was the best meet ever, in my opinion. So anyway, so bottom line, at the end of the Olympics, there were 270,000 volunteers, and the crew. Bob had told me that the LAOC were the stage crew, and then the other officials were the what do you call it, the performers. So we had an L on our badge, they had a D on their badge. But anyway, bottom line is, at the end, these people that were so skeptical of LA and what we could do, there was going to be smog. There was no smog, there was no traffic, there was no crime. And the best thing of all is they said this was the best Olympics ever conducted up to that point, and which they used to say all the time. But the race walking people over in Europe said it was the only major race that had ever been conducted where there were no lap counting controversies. So I was really proud of that, and I thought it was, all the hard work was justified.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's wonderful. I suppose a lesson there is the ability to adjust on the fly, prepare, but and the preparation enables you to be in a position to take evasive action or, useful action. So can everybody see this group of people? And so we see Lori Robertson over here underneath the Los Angeles Olympic Games umpire crew label. And we see Eric Zemper over there on the other side.
We still
on
got
the
the
other
race
side.
walk chart on here.
What's that?
We still have the race walk chart on the screen.
Oh, okay.
No,
We saw a picture.
No.
Oh, the picture was on. The picture was on.
Okay.
Yeah, the picture.
On
So,
my screen.
Yeah, it was. The
Not on
chart
my
was
screen
down.
either.
Now we're back to the race walking.
yeah, so
Used to be
Jim,
on
stop
mine, now it's
your,
gone.
Jim, stop your screen sharing.
I don't even see us. This is what I was afraid of. I don't even see anything.
All right,
I only
so
see
now
the
do you-
pictures of you guys.
Do you see
Maybe I
the
should
photo
just leave
now?
the meeting. I don't see anything.
Scott, you should be able to unshare. You should be able to close his.
I think your mom's about done.
So, all right. So
Why don't I just leave the meeting? Oh, hey, a bar came down and said screen share, red bar. Just pull down menu. Let me get out. Why don't I just get out and come back on again?
All right. So, how are we doing?
Got
Can,
the
Fine now.
can people see the umpire crew?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
got the,
So we have Eric over on the one
No, I
side.
can't.
Up above,
Still
we have
don't have it.
I got it.
There we go.
Now
The
it's up.
umpire
Yes.
crew.
Do we now have it?
Umpire
Yes.
crew.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a group of people. So Eric and Lori, tell about this group, and Darlene, if you're on, Gwen, tell about this group.
Who's first?
Well, we
Somebody
worked,
go.
I thought we worked really well as a group. We were very conscious of the fact that we were under the spotlight. We were very, just like in 96, underestimated by the international community. And I think we performed amazingly well and everybody in there. The one thing that was interesting, though, is it took us a while to advocate for full participation by the women. They were often asked to serve as escorts rather than umpires, and that was a bit frustrating. We resolved that in our selection process and our leadership process in 96, and it was fully women were fully participating in the games as opposed to being treated a bit secondarily at first.
You know, I think we tend to think that not a whole lot of, or that things have been as they are, and they've been that way for many, many years, but that's not the case. And there have been needed changes over time. They occur gradually, subtly, and you look at this group of people, and certainly now half the participants would be women.
We, excuse me, need to point out that this was the first time that the women's marathon trials was actually conducted.
Yep.
Yes, there were no 10,000 meter run for the women. You went from 5,000 meters to marathon,
no,
and it was
Scott,
wonderful to be able to have that.
Actually,
Got
3,000 to marathon.
3,000, not
3,000?
five.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We didn't even have 5. And so you went from that to marathon. And that's, I remember very much images of Joan Benoit running along with that big hat of hers. Wonderful. All right. So,
Somebody asked about the selection process for 84. We had to send in an application, I believe in late 82, early 83. And then we went through a year-long period where everybody who applied had to be observed officiating at a major meet of some sort. And actually along about spring of 83, I got tabbed to be one of the evaluators and drove from Kansas City, where I was working for the NCAA at the time, drove up to Des Moines, Iowa to the Drake relays to observe about half a dozen officials from Iowa who had applied to work in 84 and observe these people in action, send
in
my
different,
evaluations.
how many
back
different
to selection.
disciplines, Eric?
Say again?
How many different disciplines did those officials you observed work?
It was all over the board. I don't remember the exact ones, but there wasn't any one specific type of, they were in all different event areas.
Huh.
But I sent my evaluations in, they had a selection committee designated that reviewed all the written applications, all the evaluations from different people around the country who did the evaluations. And then in December, they made their final decisions. And as I think Dee said earlier, they sent letters out in early January notifying people that they had been selected to work in 84. So that
What-
gave us a few months to get prepared. I had to, for this Olympic Games, every official paid their own way. We were not given any compensation. It was just strictly for the honor of officiating in the Olympic Games. I had to track down, I rented an apartment at Pepperdine University and drove back and forth from over west side of Los Angeles to the Coliseum area every day of the competition. We had to pay our own travel, pay our own meals outside of the stadium. Inside the stadium, my recollection is we got the same sub sandwiches and Snickers bars and M&Ms every day because M&M Company was one of the major sponsors. But it was pretty boring meals. But we did pay our own way. That fortunately that got changed by the time the Olympics came back in '96 because there were a number of officials, including myself, who complained to the '96 LOC about that situation. I got the chance in '94 after the National Masters in Eugene. I sat in the East Grandstand at Hayward Field talking to the guy who was going to be in charge of officials in Atlanta. Told him about that situation. There were a lot of disturbed officials from '84 when we found out they cleared 25 million in profit from LA, but couldn't afford to spend 1% of it to pay at least some expenses for the officials. So '96, they did pay our travel. They gave us housing and meals. The only clinker was that those selected in '96 were required to be in Atlanta for the trials as well, but they didn't pay anything for the trials. So we still ended up paying for a trip to Atlanta. But again, it's, you can't beat work in the Olympic Games. It's an experience like nothing else. It's was still well worth it.
Yeah, we'll put up some photos from '96 in a bit.
Scott, this is
we're
Mike
gonna-
Armstrong.
Yeah, Mike.
If I could just let me answer a couple of questions in the chat real quick and kind of get those, because a lot of questions about the selection process for officials. And so just to let people know, the USTF Governance Handbook, Regulation 18J, specifies the selection process for Olympic officials, and it's just like the selection process for other USA championships. There's a selection committee that does that, from the NOC, men's and women's track and field, the Athletes Commission, as well as some special appointees by the USATF president. And so when it comes time, all national and master level officials will have a chance to apply for the Olympic Games. And that committee will make the selections. And some things they'll look for will be experience in championship meets. Have you worked at the championship level? Have you demonstrated your ability to function and work at the highest level of USATF and NCAA championship meets? So those will be some of the things they'll be looking for in that process. But every national and master level official will have the chance to apply to officiate the Olympic Games, and probably 150 officials will be selected for those games. If people have specific questions, if they can reach out to me, I give them more details. But that's kind of how the process will go as it's outlined by the USATF Governance Handbook.
In
Those
1996,
rules weren't
we
in
had-
effect in '84 and '96.
Yeah, those
Those
that
rules
process
didn't
was-
come along until after '96.
Yeah,
Well, in
that process
'96, I was,
process
Eric,
was
on
put into
'96,
effect.
I was on the selection committee.
Mhm.
It was the first time that we had a database to operate off of, which was
Yeah.
very helpful because we
Yeah.
could document claims. But the other thing is that people were very careful in making sure that not only were you experienced, but that you would be willing to work in any role you were asked to work. which meant some people who had only been in charge were not selected because they had never worked at anything except being the head official. And so it was a really good group, and we all worked very collaboratively on it. We were appointed by the president of the USA Track and Field at that time.
But since the 96 games, they've put a process in the governance handbook that covers the selection of officials.
Yeah.
So it's changed since those days to some degree. Sorry to interrupt you, Scott. I just thought I'd answer those
No,
questions.
I'm glad you did that, Mike. We're coming up upon another selection committee meeting in advance of the national meeting for the championships this next summer. And that'll be the last one that Mike will be heading up after his 8 years as splendid years as leader of the officials committee. So here's something now. Bettina Huber is on this call, and here's something kind of near and dear to Bettina. Sorry, I don't know why these green lines are showing up. I'm doing nothing that I know of. So
Oh,
Bettina,
gosh.
Bettina, what do you see here?
Well, on my end, I'm seeing the black and white photo of Hayward Field. Are those the scanner lines that they're showing what the record marks are? I couldn't tell. There was something that was streaking across the screen. Now
Yeah, I don't know what that is either, Bettina, but it looks to me as though we have discus in action.
Oh gosh, there's so many things. I mean, I don't know if we're going in order here by 84 games and discussing that entirely, and then going to Atlanta, or what our
I'm
procedure
using
is.
this as a segue to you talking about things because you were in the 96 games, right?
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
is a slide I had wanted to pull up earlier. This, of course, just predates the LA games by 4 years
yeah.
because this is the 80 trials. But these people
Well,
right here are marking a discus. This person here is picking up the discus. And this is, of course, the old format for Hayward. Lots of
yeah.
things have changed. But
Well, I was going through, I climbed in my attic last night and pulled out a bunch of things I hadn't looked at in years. So a lot of, memories and things came back. Touch on a few different things here. Well, like Dee had mentioned, women to men. And I happen to have a list of the people that were put up in the dorms in there who stayed together and whatnot. And I saw that there were 74 double occupancy rooms in the dorms for men, but 16 for women. So it wasn't a 50-50 situation, at least back then. Another thing too, I saw that there were over 800 people that applied for the games, but just 170 were chosen. As far as doing multiple events and such, javelin, of course, was my main thing, but I was also in the shot and was in the reserve pool, which, as I believe it was Mike that said, you need to be able to do wherever, they stick you and whatnot. So there was that. A few other memories. Gosh, the Olympic cauldron kind of saved me at that point. This is an Olympics, and I'm like a really super emotional person. So I remember the first day going out there, and you're going into this giant stadium, like 87,000 people, and they had the sound system on, which was just amazing. They had Gloria Estefan playing Reach, and it was just booming through there, and I had chills, goosebumps. I just wanted to cry. I was like, this is so cool. And then I looked up at the cauldron, and it's like, that looks like a McDonald's French fry cup. I looked at that, I was like, oh, okay, that saved me from just sitting there like, oh, this is so cool. I just was like, this is ridiculous. So, yeah, there's that a picture of that cauldron back there. For the rest of the time, I kind of kept myself in check by that French fry cup up there. So, but it was interesting, the different dynamics, and this is for the people that haven't done them.
So Bettina,
Oh, sorry.
let me ask you.
Yeah.
See where the photographers are? Is that the run out for the Jav runway?
This looks like it's off in a corner. Yeah, one of them. We were at both ends at different times. Yeah, that
looks
looks
like
like
high
one
jump.
of them. What's
Yes.
that?
It looks like high jump if you look on the right, far right of the picture.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too, and I haven't experienced this in any national championship. I recall in Atlanta, they had the camera, the field camera like you see in football games and different things, that slides on the cables that can go all over the field so you can look down at something. And I remember one night we had a javelin event, and here's that camera up there, but again, it's dark, it's nighttime, and they allowed photography people just wherever on the field. And of course, they're out there, they want to get their shot, they're not paying attention to the safety of the event. And so I remember being out there in the field as a marker, and I had some photographer guy probably about 20 feet behind me who was just looking through his lens, not paying attention. And here comes a javelin out there, and it hits one of those cables with the camera and deflects off, and then you have no idea where it's going. So I'm yelling at the photographer, to look out. I'm having to not only watch my event, but watch him back there and keep them safe. And anyway, we wound up having to stop the event, get that camera off the field, at least the cables out of the sector, because it created a very unsafe environment. So, so there's just different things that come to mind on that. I also remember, for
Do
instance,
you have any idea where that one Jav ended up?
oh, I don't know. We had to obviously give him a rethrow, because who knows where that would have landed on its own. It hit a cable, so we had to give him another opportunity there. But yeah, it was just amazing looking through all my stuff, last night. I remember going to and from the dorms, Emory University back then, and every day they took us by bus and took us a different route for security purposes. We didn't go the same street each time, and so they mixed that up. I remember the pipe bomb situation at Centennial, the park there, the different dynamics that changed just literally overnight. I had some friends, Eric Zemper, or not Eric Zemper, Rich Zalaika and John Lupus. We hung out together. We were there the night before it happened. And when they brought us initially to the stadium by bus, they dropped us off at the police entrance. And initially, you just go right up through there, and then you get off the bus, and there's a security guy, and he looks you in the face. Hi, good morning. Everything was all nice and pretty much straight shot. But then after that pipe bomb incident, now we had to go through a series of all kinds of different gates. There was military people there, rifles, dogs, whatever. Now you get off the bus, and the guy, he's not looking at your face right off the bat. He's looking at your credentials and, looking at you all serious. Do you match? I mean, the whole dynamics had completely changed. So,
Bettina, just a minute here.
Yeah.
Betsy Reed, you were on this, and you had brought up the security differences between before and after this bombing. The bombing that's referred to is one of about 4 this individual had set off. A person who was very disenchanted with this and that.
Rudolph.
Yeah, last name of Rudolph.
Yep.
There was a gentleman named Jewel who had been suspected. He was a security person who had alerted people, but and he had to suffer the indignity of having his name wrapped up in all of this. But Betsy, go ahead and tell what you know about it.
Well, the bombing happened at it was late at night. The next morning was, the first event was the heptathlon. So all of the high jump crew was among the very first to go through. And as Bettina said, I mean, previously it had been a school bus. Now it's a van, multiple stops, including slide the mirror under to make sure there's nothing attached to the vehicle. One of the things that was really striking to me was the line to get even into the outer ring of where the stadium was. There were absolutely no spectators. There was this immense line of people that you could see, but nobody was being allowed to even begin to be checked. When the heptathlon started, there were no spectators. The only people in there were the competition officials, the coaches, the athletes. That changed. Eventually, they started letting people through, but they had the security set up a pretty fair distance from this. Well, it's what becomes the Atlanta Braves field. And they were still searching everything when we arrived, and they couldn't delay the start of the events. So as I said, the first ones went off with no crowd and no spectators in attendance. And it really was, well, for everyone, like with September 11th, that there was a very bright line before and after. And, you know, you weren't going to mistake one for the other.
Hey, Scott, can I add a couple things?
Of course.
Let me just add on to what Betsy
Lori,
had said. Yes.
Lori, introduce yourself here.
Yeah, Lori Bemker from Rhode Island. But I was from Ohio during the 96. So one of the things that I think that happened with the 96, we were already in a high state of alert. Remember, the TW-800 had blown up on July 17th. So they were already
Lockerbie. That was Lockerbie.
No, that's Pan Am, and that's in
TWA Flight 800.
Okay.
From JFK.
Okay.
So they were already worried about that. Then we had the bomb on the 27th. And then the Olympic Committee decided that they were going to go ahead and do it. The behind the scenes also that was going on was Israel. They were being protected, and they had their own special security, which means on the bus, you had people, they weren't the athletes, but they were, I guess, security guards for Israel, and they all had machine guns underneath their clothes. And that was, I don't know if a lot of people know that. Because that went on even with the Paralympics, because they made sure that they had to have special protection of what was going on during that time, pretty much what's going on now. And then we had President Clinton and his wife. They came in, and one thing that I learned is, because we were bringing athletes from the warm-up track to the competition, and our bus was stopped, and everybody's calling me saying, Lori, where are they? And I have a walkie-talkie, and I basically says, well, the motorcade is on such and such. So once I got to the stadium, it wasn't a pretty sight, because I wasn't supposed to say anything like that on the walkie-talkie. So that's something I'm sure a president will want to come and will want to know what the protocols are for that.
Oh, yeah. Not every event has an attending president and first lady of the United States. That's for sure. What was your role, Lori, in the 96?
Call room.
Okay.
So we basically, the job there, we did a lot of escorting. When you started with, like I had the 400 men's was one of them. We partnered with, I had Neil Sharsky and we were partners. And we would start from the beginning to the end, even up to the award ceremony. So I was, I got to escort Michael Johnson, which was kind of a good experience. Some of the funny things that happened at the warm-up track, I think it was Greg Gumbel. They were very, high on security, and he wanted to get into the warm-up track. And we all told him no. And he's climbing the fence in a $1,000 suit. I'm not sure what actually happened, but it was actually comical.
Another thing I wanted to mention too, as far as officiating, was in terms of dynamics, I should say. When we had all these training sessions ahead of time, we got kind of two ends of how do I want to put this? Well, what we were told. On one hand, we were told, hey, if you're nervous and everything, don't worry about it. You've all done championships. Just think of this as a glorified championship, just another one, just more people involved, but look at it that way. And then on the other end, you have, okay, when you're out here, you have no country. You're not an American. You're not anything. You are totally unbiased. You have no country. You have to pay complete focus onto your event. You can't be watching anything else, anybody else competing. Like I had Carl Lewis off to the side. If I was caught looking at him or what he was doing,
You had to act like a marshal.
What's that?
You had to act like a marshal.
Yeah, you had to be very focused. You couldn't watch anything else, or they'd pull you off the field. So yeah, it was kind of both ends. Relax. It's just another big one that you've done versus So yeah. So you just try to make sense of that when you're out there.
Yeah. Carol Coram, you've sent in quite a few photos. Let's hear about your experiences.
Well, it was interesting when, first of all, Carol Coram, when I was at the 96 games, I was a year into being a member of the Pacific Northwest. I had moved from New York, where I was at Metropolitan, which is called something else now. And Bettina, that's interesting. You said that because the night, and you mentioned Carl Lewis, the night of the final of the men's long jump, and I was on the long jump, triple jump, which meant the multi-event as well. When Carl Lewis took his jump and he knew he won, and as you said, we were of no citizenship. And I'd known Carl since the 80s, personally. So I'm standing as flight coordinator. And he jumps on the runway and he's sprinting right at me. And I said, and he runs down, he grabs me, he swings me around. And I said, Carl, stop. You're not supposed to do this. I can't do this. But he says, I don't care. And he kept swinging around. Then he put me down. I said, okay, Carl, I'm happy for you. Get off the runway. It was very strange. But that same night, about halfway through the event, I looked over my left shoulder and there was a credentialed photographer. That's fine. But then I saw something strange behind him. And I kind of backed up. I had time. Well, he had some kind of cover, I don't know what it was. And his 9-year-old son was underneath this.
Whoa.
Yes. And I went over and I let him, I don't know what, well, I kind of remember what I said, but I'm not going to repeat it. And even though I didn't have the authority to do it, I kicked him off the field. It was horrible. But we one of the nights that I remember, and was, Betsy, you'll probably remember this if you were out that night. I know the pole vault was going on that night. It was the hottest most humid evening we had during the whole time we were there. So when we were getting ready to line up inside underneath, we started bitching about, because you know those worsted wool jackets
Oh, God.
are
Yeah.
hot even when it's cold.
Mhm.
And we really started bitching about, oh, we have to wear these jackets. And I don't know who took the word up to the, at the time, IAAF council, because we couldn't make that decision.
Mhm.
And it was brutal. It was brutal. And
Mhm.
so they got the word to us that we have to march in with our jackets. And then once we get to our places, we could take them off. We remember those little chairs we had? We could put our jackets on the backs of those chairs, do our officiating. When we're ready to march back in, we put the jackets back on and march back in. So somehow the pole vault was already out there. And I don't know how I got the assignment to go out and let the pole vault folks know that they could do that. Talk about some happy officials. Oh my God. But
were
it
you
was brutal,
Yeah.
brutal.
You were wearing your ties also in that
Yes,
racing
we had
style that you
the
have
men
there.
had the ties, and we had silk scarves, 100% silk scarves, and
Scott,
worsted
Still
wool
have mine.
jackets. Yeah,
Yeah, still have mine. Scott,
Yeah.
you were given two uniforms. There was the morning session uniform, which
Judy has
was
that on right now. Judy has the shirt
right.
on.
She's got the polo shirt on. It was the polo shirt,
Yes.
but that's it. The skirts, the belt, the hat, the socks. Yeah, but we weren't blue. We were that tealish forest green thing. They were color coded.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to remember that the red was medical, the teal that we wore was officials, but there was also, yeah, the blue and the gold.
Blue was management.
Management.
Meat management, the same way Phil Henson's blazer was navy blue. And then I think gold
Yeah.
was IAAF folks or
Ah.
related.
Okay. I traded shirts. I already had a teal. And it's like, I don't need multiple of the same thing. So I asked somebody else with a different color. You want to switch?
No matter what we wore, though, the heat and humidity the whole time was awful. But that one night, and it was night, pitch black. It was worse than it had been during any of the days that we were out there. It was
Well, speaking of days and people who look cool, calm, and collected, we have the Langenbachs on. What do you have to say here about what people have talked about? And how does it that you look so cool in this photo?
Hi, Scott. Thanks for putting this thing on. It's been a really fun listening to it.
Sure.
Carol and I were actually blessed because we got to share a room ourselves. And I think Dee and Owen were the only other married couple that was there. But anyway, when you're talking about the rooms for women and rooms for men, there was a couple that were shared too. So
there were five that had couples.
Oh, five.
Five.
Ricos.
Carol and I had entirely different type things. I was a discus hammer official, but as Lori Robertson mentioned earlier, we were supposed to be able to do anything. And I act as a runner for a race walk official and the race walk judge in the men's 20K. I umpired at the first exchange zone for the 100-meter preliminary, 4x100 meter preliminary. And I also did shot and javelin in addition to the discus and hammer. I mean, I was an add-on for the shot and discus when they had doubled up on those events. Carol?
Well, I got to be a lap counter. There were only two of us, so we felt pretty special. And we got to walk out with the umpires. So we just felt a part of a group, not just the two of us. Pedro Vasquez he lives in Georgia. And we've become very good friends. All these years, we still exchange Christmas cards. But of course, I didn't know him until I got to Atlanta. And I got to be an umpire in an exchange zone with Donovan Bailey from Canada. So that was kind of fun too, not just my own job. But it was a fabulous experience.
Scott,
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing about the horizontal jumps group. 96 was the first Olympic Games that had the women's triple jump.
Oh, looking at those blazers,
Yep.
actually, Carol.
96 was the first women's triple jump in the Olympic Games.
I'll be darned.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, one of the other things that was very upsetting to the hammer discus crew was one of our stalwart members, John Lupus from the Pacific Association, got assaulted and beaten up one night after I think about halfway through the games, and he actually was hurt so bad he had to go home. So we ended up a little bit short, but we really had plenty of people. I mean, we had more officials than I've essentially ever had on any event.
So he was
any
just,
event, yeah.
he was assaulted outside the stadium by some
Yeah,
thug?
one evening he'd gone out a little bit late for dinner, and some young thugs beat him up. I think he was actually coming back on the Atlanta. What would they call the Atlanta thing? The Metro or something?
MARTA.
The MARTA. The train is the MARTA.
Oh, the MARTA, not Metro. Yeah, MARTA.
No,
Marta.
no, that actually wasn't the case. Sorry, I could tell you because I was there. It was the three of us, John and Rich Salika and I, and we went down to the mall there, the underground mall, and for dinner and just to hang out. And then he decided he didn't want to stick around as long and wanted to head back on his own. But Rich and I stayed there. But then after a bit, we'll go back to walk on back. And then we saw as we were going down the sidewalk, all these people crowded around and an ambulance there. It's like, what's going on there? And we got close and we found out, oh my God, that's John, and going back first on his own. And it was someone that had a paper bag and put chunks of concrete and rocks in there and wailed on him with a bag, hitting him in the face. He broke his nose, he broke his cheekbone, and we brought his wallet and some things to him later in the hospital, and he went home early. Yeah, he was attacked just walking back to the dorms on his own ahead of us.
Wow.
So it was very sad.
You all see the date here on this photo. Everybody who took photos in those days remembers this being imprinted. It certainly helps somebody like me determine a date all these years later. Is John Shirey, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you, Scott.
Well, there you are, John. Do you recognize yourself?
The handsome guy in that picture there is me.
There you are. Okay, John.
Well,
Good for you.
The comments being made by other people spur a lot of memories in my mind as well. And it was the greatest experience of my 51 years as a certified official. And it looks like most of the people on this call are veterans of the Olympic Games. But if there are people here that are thinking about Los Angeles, I can't say anything but good about, you need to apply. You need to work hard between now and then and hopefully get selected, and you'll have the time of your life because it's just a special occasion to be an Olympic official. I want to reflect a little bit on Atlanta. Atlanta was
John?
Yes.
Can I just interject something quickly here? John mentions, working hard and having the officiating the 28 Olympics as a goal. And part of the and Mike had mentioned something about evaluations. Well, John was some years ahead of evaluations for USATF and had helped to revise the process by which officials are evaluated. And so just wanted to say thanks, John, for all that you did to advance the state of evaluations to the point where they are.
Mm.
Yeah, well, thank you, Scott. And by the way, Carolyn Hill took my place and is now heading up official evaluations, and she's doing a great job. But, reflecting a little bit on Atlanta, Atlanta was an unlikely place for an Olympic Games. It's not Tokyo, it's not London, it's not Rome, it's certainly not Paris. And there were some criticisms made of the selection of Atlanta, and also some criticisms made of how Atlanta conducted the Olympics. It had the unfortunate or misfortune of having the bombing incident. And by the way, Eric Rudolph, who planted that pipe bomb, is serving 4 concurrent lifetime terms in prison without parole. So, that guy is gone. But I want to say things on behalf of Atlanta. I thought we were treated very well as officials. And some of those comments have already been made by Eric and Dee and Bettina. But yeah, we had to pay to go to the trials. But, Delta Airlines paid for our airfare, to and from Atlanta. When I got to the airport, there was a woman waiting for me with my name on a sign. She was my hostess, provided by the organizing committee. And, she escorted me to the center where we checked in. We had all sent in our uniform measurements. And so our uniform was waiting for us in a bag. We got 4 shirts, and there was another bag of socks and our belt and our hat and all of those things, the shoes, which I still have. And by the way, I saved everything. I have everything from Atlanta. The center, the welcome center, was there at the airport. It was quick, efficient. We kept being escorted from place to place. Finally, we were put on a bus and escorted to our rooms at Emory University. I don't know what happened to the rest of you, but I had a single room. We were all told that we would have double rooms, but I got a single room. My roommate got a single room. And when asked if that was a mistake, no, you get single rooms. Those rooms were comfortable. They were well appointed. We had televisions that we could watch the games on when we weren't there. I compare that to crappy old Carson Hall that we get put in every time we go to Eugene. And, Emory was a dream. We had a wonderful eating hall. All of our meals were provided. We had transportation, as was pointed out, to and from the stadium. And by the way, it wasn't always meant to be a different route every day. Those drivers were drivers from other cities. They got lost a few times on the way to the stadium. So it wasn't just a security measure. It was, one of them was from my city, Cincinnati. And I met him. It was his first time driving the streets of Atlanta on the way to the stadium. Nevertheless, people tried to do their best with our credential, which I still have. All we had to do was waive that, and we were admitted free of charge to ride MARTA
I went to some tourist attractions. Wave your credential. It was free for me. And yes, the bombing was a terrible incident, and it put a pall over the Olympics. But while Centennial Olympic Park was closed, it reopened on our day off. You know, that day we had between the first 4 days and then the second 4 days, we have that day off, right? Well, that was the day the Centennial Olympic Park reopened. My family had come in the day before. My wife, all three of my children, and my oldest sister, and we all decided we were going to be part of that crowd that went to the reopening of Centennial Olympic Park. And it was a wonderful experience. There was a feeling of community among that crowd. There was also a feeling of defiance. We weren't going to let some nut kind of ruin the Olympics for everybody that was there. And we stayed until late that night, in the park doing a number of things, that zero depth fountain with the Olympic rings that, all of my family got wet running through that fountain and having a great time that day. And that was a relief from the hot weather. And I asked all of my children today what they remembered from those Olympics. And what they all remember was that their mother bought them these sprayers with propellers on them that they could blow water on them while they were in the stands, watching dad out on the field, but a lot of heat and humidity. So it was fun for them, even though it was hot and humid for the rest of us out on the field. I was a pole vault official, but also like all of us, apparently, I was also picked to be on the long jump crew and the triple jump crew. And I was in the pool every morning. And then if you were in the pool for reserves, you had to be there like 6:30 or 7 o'clock or something like that. And that day that the security measures changed and then bus would no longer let us off at the stadium. Well, I was already at the stadium, and I was picked along with some others to take over the heptathlon duties for the umpires that couldn't get there that day. And so we were all set to do another event, be umpires for the hurdles. But just as we started that event, the real umpires showed up. So even that, sort of worked out, that there were challenges and problems, but things got worked out. And speaking of other things for the officials, we got a stipend, and we could use that stipend to buy rings, and some of us did. And, I wear this proudly every day. I know some of you have rings. Dee, you've got a ring.
Yeah.
Bettina, you've got a ring. Believe it or not, some of the officials just took the money. And I can't imagine why you would do that. This ring, there's only a couple of hundred of these that we all got. They were specially designed for the officials for the 96 Olympics.
Oh, just one little comment to that. When I first got mine, I had to send it back because it said a fickle. It was spelled wrong.
Yeah, but I think
So
they
they
were
had to
done
send
by
me a new one.
Justin, but they probably fixed it for no charge.
Yeah.
And so, this is special that we all have these rings from the Olympics. And I still get stopped by people wanting to know whether I was in the Super Bowl or something. They see that ring, and I said, see those 5 rings? you know, it's an Olympic ring, and they're just wild and amazed that we got such a gift, you know, from that event. So, you know, I just think of positive things about the Olympics. I was in Los Angeles every day for the Olympics, but I wasn't an official. There was a snafu with that snail mail, and I never got to apply to be an official in Los Angeles because I changed addresses, and you know, Indianapolis never got my change of address, but I did get to do the Olympic trials in Los Angeles. I won't be applying to do the 28 Olympics in Los Angeles. I hope I'm still alive, and I hope to still be there every day, but boy, I sure hope a lot of officials apply for Los Angeles, and I hope about 170 of them get picked for what's going to be the experience of their lives.
Well, John, your comment there is the major reason for having this Zoom. And I appreciate your saying that very much. We are coming up on 6:20. Are there people who would like to say something and participate in this Zoom? And by the way, once we end it, for the major part of it, Eric Zemper has some other things that he has prepared and is going to say about the 2012 Olympics. But go ahead.
I'm Cindy Slate. Now, I wasn't going to say anything, but there were a couple of things that Carol Coram and Lori Bemker said that made me want to share a couple of thoughts if we have time. I was a clerk with Lori, and I saw some other people in the call earlier that were also clerks. And one of the things that I was really honored to do was I was assigned to the combined events for the heptathlon and the decathlon. And I know exactly what Betsy was talking about that first day. In fact, they contacted us at the village that we were going to have to leave and get there a lot earlier than we originally planned. But I noticed that in the chat that someone put in there about the electric raker. And I had been one of those people that Brad Whitehair and Tony Wayne had trained how to use a broom, and they thought we were crazy back there using the broom, but it made a big difference. And so they said, oh, no, you won't need the brooms. We've got this new contraption that the Swedish people have developed, and we won't need it. And it was wonderful. But the thing about it was the dirt would go over the side of it, and it made a mess. And so I had my broom, and I'm from Atlanta. So Tony and Brad convinced me to ride MARTA to go home and bring my broom. And so during the Olympics, Carol, the broom that they used was my broom, and the guys in the crew, everybody signed it, and I still have it. And so I always thought if I ever saw Carl Lewis again, maybe I'd give it to him, you know, but that was kind of cool knowing that my broom was there. But a couple of things about the clerking was it was really cool to be with the combined events. I know Mr. O'Brien was a little anxious. I remember that day one, he wanted more time to warm up for the 400 meters, and all those other guys were ready to get out of there. And he wanted to vote. Nobody would vote with him. And so we had the 400 meters. He wanted to go to the practice track and practice, but they didn't do that. And one of the things that we did as clerks was that we would be over at the practice track and we would check the bags of the athletes. And a couple of times I did it. One time I did it. We had also been trained that some of the countries did not like for women to touch their stuff and to not take it personally if they gave us a hard time when we were checking their bags. And they said that one of the countries was Ethiopia. And the day that they did I think it was the semis before the 10,000 meter men, I was assigned to check the bags, and Mr.
Gabriel Selassie.
Yes, from Ethiopia was there. And I said, sir, I need to check your bag. And he said, oh, no, you know, don't touch my bag. And so I said, sir, we're not trying to steal anything from you or take anything from you. We just want to make sure you have your bib numbers. And he said, oh no, I have my bib number. I said, well, may I see your bib number? And he went through and he pulled it out and he had his uniform and his bib number was not on it. And he just dumped everything out of his bag and he was just going on and he was asking the guys that was with him. So anyway, to make a long story short, I calmed him down. I said, I will get you another bib number. Don't worry about it. We had, because I think they had 8 bib numbers for every athlete. And so I called they had a phone over there and I called somebody. I said, look, could you get his number? And I says, will you do me a favor and meet him at the bus? Don't wait till he walks in, because he was very upset. And so one of the clerks that were over there met him at the bus and he was so excited. So every time he went through, the rest of the time, and I was in the thing, he said, come over here, Miss Cindy. And so I became friends with the Ethiopians, and I thought that was so cool. And another thing was I was attached to the discus, men's discus, and Mr. Schultz, who was a world record holder at the time, and Lars Riedel was there too from Germany. And we were told that the German athletes like to smoke. And so, but smoking was not allowed. And so they were getting really antsy because nobody would let them smoke. And so I knew a couple of the security people because they were from Atlanta. And I said, look, is there any place that we can take them to smoke? And he says, if you tell anybody and I, get fired, you're going with me. So anyway, he found this place and I took Mr. Schultz around and he could smoke over on the side. And so after that, the German athletes were looking for me because they say smoke smokes. And so that was kind of my relationship with some of the athletes. It was kind of neat. And I'm sure Laurie and Carol have a lot of other stories, but I thought those two were interesting.
Well, Cindy and everyone else, the electronic and Lori Bemker and I have been on chat, the electronic raker that still dropped so much dirt that you had to smooth it out. We lovingly called the sand bony. That's what we call it. The sand bony.
Sand bony.
I was just so happy that I had, a couple brooms that I could bring, that they could use. So I just thought, because, there weren't that many places you could find brooms like that. In fact, we had to we would probably order them on Amazon, the ones back then, because there weren't that many of them, but you couldn't do that back then. So I was really happy that they were able to use my broom. So I don't care. I don't know if you remember a broom or not, but that was mine. So that was kind of cool.
So have you kept your broom as a commemorative souvenir, Cindy?
Yes, I still have it. It's in my garage, but yes.
Oh, there you go. There.
Yeah. I have a couple of souvenirs that I had no business walking out of the stadium with, but they're in the room right over there.
Zuhair, do
Yes.
you recognize your younger self?
Oh, yeah. I was in the high jump and teams, 2 crews running high jumps, 2 pits at the same time, except the finals. And so we officiated 5 events, each crew. The other crew, or the other team, officiated the Charlie Austin, I believe, the men's high jump final. Charlie Austin won. That was on Thursday night or Wednesday night. And last night, Saturday night, we officiated the women final. And I was the flight coordinator in all the 5 events. And it was a great honor just to be in the Olympics and be in the high jump and see all those athletes and officials, and the experience was great.
Well, how about that? You're well thought of by the Long and Box, and so I'm happy to have you participate in this Zoom.
Thank you, Bob and Carol.
Anybody else here going to chime in?
If
Two-
I could, if I
two
could say one,
things.
I'm
One
sorry.
is that what I have in my hands, and I can't remember where I got it. If you can see this champagne bottle.
Oh, cool.
Unopened. I don't drink. I don't even want to open it. I don't know what it, but I got it somewhere down there. And that's when you could take liquid on the planes with you, way back when in the old days. The other thing I would tell people is if you're selected for the next games in LA, find some time to absolutely have fun. One afternoon, it was the day, that one day in the middle where you have off. And a group of us horizontal jump gals decided we were going to see if we could go down to the, at the time, the Georgia Dome to see, I think it was Paula Everdell who looked up the schedule and said, hey, the US women are playing basketball today. It was one of the African nations, I didn't know. Your credential, I have mine right here, got you into some things, but it didn't get you into other events. So we had a challenge with the men of the horizontal crew to see if we'd be able to get in. We went over, showed the credential, which meant nothing. But whoever we got said, oh, you have to go through the G door. Okay, we walk all the way around. We show the credential. They opened the door. They let us in. We're in the Georgia Dome. Okay, but we still have to go through sections to get to the game. Everywhere we went, doors open. They picked up the velvet rope chain. Somehow we got in, and we were under the bleachers, saw someone who worked there and said, you know, could we sit somewhere? Well, I'd love to do it, but, you know, I can't. Oh, we understand that. We snuck through, came out the middle where the commentators were, and I looked up and said, let's sit there. It was the press box. So we were sitting in the press area. I said, you realize, you guys, we can't cheer. We can't do anything that brings attention to us, or we get kicked out of here. So anytime that the American women scored or something awesome happened, we'd sit there, we'd clasp our hands and just go, yes, yes, that's all we could do. The guys never got in. So we won that little battle, and we saw the whole game. And it was fun to be able to sneak in and do something a little naughty, but we got there and we saw a basketball game.
I was just going to mention two uniform items with all the day uniform and dress uniform and such. Afterwards, people wanted those, and we had to watch out. Like if we took something to the cleaners, you know, to the dry cleaners or whatever, we heard some people like stole buttons, the buttons off the blazers and some different things. They wanted them. I heard that the hats, I think we're going for like $200, and the blazer like 2,000 or something. I don't know if it was true, but that's what was going out there. You know, that you had to watch your stuff, you know, initially.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that too.
Yeah. So whoever's doing Olympics in the future, watch your stuff.
Yeah.
And then the second thing too, well, as Carol mentioned a lot, the heat and such. I always appreciated whenever I got to be out in the field, grass versus the track and whatnot, and if I had the marker, because I would stand there instead of just arms down and, you know, looking official, I would have my hands across the marker, the top, with my arms out a little bit, and I'd stand with my feet apart, looking all, you know, official and just, you know, really good. But it was for the purpose of, if I had my arms up, I can get some airflow in through the blazer around my back, and with my legs apart, I can get some air coming up my skirt. It's just for the purpose of cooling off, but I look good.
We had the, well, I should say because I was flight coordinator, had the, one of those misters back there for the athletes. So every once in a while, when I looked and I had 2 seconds, I'd take a couple of steps backwards and just stand in front of it and then turn around and go right back. But I have to tell you, when you mentioned the buttons on the jacket, it's a terrific honor. that the Washington Athletic Club, of which I'm a member here in Seattle, framed my jacket, blouse, and scarf. It's in this huge frame. It's
Wow.
there are 3 restaurants there. It's in the sports cafe there, and it's been there for a number of years. It's still there, and that was quite an honor to have that now still displayed there.
Where is this restaurant located, Carol?
It's the Washington Athletic Club. It's my athletic club.
Oh, okay.
And it's in one of 3 restaurants. It's called not Torchy's, Haggerty's. It's the sports restaurant.
Oh.
So they have 3 restaurants. And this one is the sports one. Everybody comes. There's big screen TVs all over the place if they want to watch games and stuff. So it's in Haggerty's restaurant in the Washington Athletic Club.
Cool.
Oh.
I have to relate a story about buttons. At the LA Olympics, I got ink on my blazer and I had to have it dry cleaned. And when it was returned, the buttons were gone. There was a whole set of plain buttons. And I told them what happened. And Marshall Goss, who was the officials coordinator, says, "Give me your blazer on Thursday." And they replaced the buttons.
Wow, that's cool too.
This is was in Atlanta, Tom?
No, that was in LA.
LA. Okay, I've got
Yeah.
another story for you. My great aunt, when she died, she was taken, from where she had died to the mortuary, and between where she had died in the mortuary, one of her fingers had disappeared. A finger that had a very valuable ring on it. So there are people who will do some very bizarre things, won't they? Such is humanity.
Cool things in Atlanta, and Kelly Rankin was on the start team as well. The guy who handed us this pistol every time we started a race was a guy named Werner Carmichael. And I said, "I know that name. Aren't you an Olympic champion?" And he was. He was a bobsled guy.
Oh, So
he was so cool, that guy. He was great.
Tom, while you're on, what did you do during the men's 200?
I was on recall.
It was my understanding that Kelly was up for being the head, was being the starter.
He was, that's a little bit of controversy there. Yes, he was. And the assignment was changed.
And we'll leave it at that.
Yes, it was
Okay.
changed in favor of the person who was the chief.
Can I make a couple of?
It's good to
quick
be the
comments?
king. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say, I have a lot of great memories from Los Angeles. All the competition there was fabulous. It's intense. Great memories from Atlanta. Great memories from 2012 in London. The competition at the Olympic Games is probably even more intense than you'll see in the World Championships. It's nice to be a world champion, but if you're an Olympic champion, that carries a cachet that's kind of a step above. So if those of you who haven't worked games yet, if you get the chance, absolutely grab that chance, because there is no experience like it. I've done 3 of them now, and let me tell you, it does not get old. It's just as exciting, if not more so, every time you do it. So if you have the chance, do it.
As a member of the Georgia Association, I would like to thank y'all for all your kind words that you said about your experience in the Atlanta Olympics, because Sandy Snow and Murray Sanford worked very hard to make sure that the officials were treated better than they were in '84. So thank you so much for all your kind words.
The other person who contributed greatly to our success and became a strong advocate was Ken Coet, who was our national chair at the time.
Amen.
Ken,
Yes.
was always behind the scenes trying to make sure that we were going to be very, very well treated.
That's a lovely tribute to him.
Oh.
Is he still alive?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's not
He's in-
well though.
He's in a nursing home right now, but
Yeah,
he's
because I
still
tried
on
to,
it.
yeah, I tried to get him on this.
Oh, thank you, Lori. Yeah, what was just mentioned about the intensity of the event, something that I know nothing about, but this photo is pretty interesting because the gentleman throwing the discus is Al Order, four-time Olympic champion, 56, 60, 64, and 68. And you can see that he has the attention, the riveted attention of everybody, including this gentleman over here on the left, the gold medalist from 76. A degree of intensity that can't be matched. Well, we are at the
Very pairing.
we're at the end of this main session. You're welcome to stay on, everybody. Eric has some things that he is prepared from the 2012 Olympics. So go ahead, Eric.
All right, you want to
Right.
give me the screen?
Yeah, it's for multiple people. So go down to the bottom
Okay,
and
share.
click share,
Okay,
and then you'll pull up your desktop.
there we go.
That's it.
Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, this is about 2012 London Olympic Games. Some of my experiences there. Try to go through this quickly. This is just a shot of the cauldron and me looking somewhat official, I guess. I was there as an international technical official for the IAAF. There were 10 ITOs assigned to the games. These are the 10 people plus David Katz, who was there as a road course measurer for the IAAF. As you can see from the list at the bottom, we came from all over the world.
That's very well labeled. I always enjoy that. Takes time to do that.
This is just an overview of the area in East London. The stadium, now called Queen Elizabeth Stadium. Our hotel was within easy walking distance over here. Came across the bridge. We got separated from the spectators to go over this bridge and get into the stadium area. This is the warm-up track here. And this white snake is the covered walkway between the warm-up track at the stadium itself. There's an overview inside the stadium. You can see there's a nice semi-roof over the stands, spectator stands, which tended to make things a little noisy in the stadium when things got raucous. The day after we arrived in London, we started having meetings. This is some of the technical meetings with officials, referees, chief judges, and the technical delegates from the IAAF, going over procedures for the officials. Then we took a walk out through the tunnel to the warm-up track, take a look at all the facilities. The officials who were some of the call room people. There was a first call room out at the warm-up track. And then we went back into the stadium, check out the facilities in the stadium. Some of you may know Chris Cohen from Great Britain, this gentleman here who's been very involved with putting on meets for World Athletics now, also with the Paralympics. These are the Omega sensor blocks for pulse heart sensors. If you watched the games, the opening ceremony, you saw some fantastic light displays in the stadium. This is how they did it. Each seat had a little 9 LED light panel that was completely computer controlled. These lights could go through the entire spectrum of colors. And that's how they put on those light shows. Once the games were over, once they were all taken out of there, of course. But this is the second call room inside the stadium itself. Warm-up track underneath the stands. The last checkpoint before they go out onto the track was Seiko people checking their bibs that make sure the chips worked and that they were assigned to the proper people.
Hey, Eric, before you go on, apparently the plans for the Coliseum are to build a floor 13 feet above the current surface for the football field. There will be thousands of concrete
pillars
that are put in. There will be a field, of course, above and below. Part of what there will be is a warm-up track. And apparently a plan is to have before races, athletes rise from down below in a
big
very
elevator
way. And this is going to be in the $140 million range to make this. But of course, compared to a brand new stadium devoted for this purpose, that price pales compared to the what the stadium would be.
Yeah, I've read about that. It's going to be a very nice thing to watch if they can pull it off. Anyway, moving on. This is some of the hallways underneath the stands in the stadium. This is the mixed zone after they come off the track out here, go through a rat maze where the press gets to talk to the athletes that come through. We had a technical meeting with representatives from all the countries, going through procedures that would be used during the games to make sure all the reps from all the countries were informed, any last minute changes. These are the technical delegates and the IAAF people that were in charge of things. These people up on the panel are the gods in charge of the competition, the ITOs who were overseeing the referees and chief judges at each event. I guess were kind of demigods, but we were second tier authority underneath the technical delegates. Some views of the stadium. We had a warm-up meet the Wednesday before the game started, or the athletic events started. They did a few selected events so the officials could get familiar with the equipment and procedures. The TV people can set up their cameras, get the camera angles they wanted, so forth. And this is our chief starter, Alan Bell, with at that time, the brand new Omega electronic gun. Although IAAF had been using an electronic gun in the World Championships for several years, this was the first Olympic Games, I believe, that used an electronic gun, because Omega didn't have one until the 2012 games. And this is the computer console that controlled the sensor block system. This was one of the interesting things. They had pole vault standards that was completely computer controlled with electric motors that moved the uprights back and forth and up and down. And I had seen this system being used in 2 or 3, 4 world level meets prior to the London Games. This was the first time I had seen this system work through the entire competition without breaking down in some way. So they finally, I guess, found all the bugs and took care of them and a really mobile TV camera,
Oh, yeah.
and the little tracks going around the curve, around the straightaway with the camera that can follow the athletes around the track. Getting into the stadium, they had a first security checkpoint covered by London police or the British military from one day to the next. Then go through a metal detector, and then finally its final primary screening by military personnel, another metal detector. You have your credential on you at all times and on display so it could be seen. And this was our uniform with our Trilby hats and so forth. This was the Stratford Bridge headed towards the stadium. We walked by this gadget. I still don't know what's that's called, but it was there's a restaurant up there, elevator that goes up and down.
Yeah.
This is the TIC, Technical Information Center, where basically the nerve center for all the country representatives, where they could get their heat sheets, results, file protests, get questions answered. So
Eric, that one lady is from France.
oops. Which one? This one? This one?
There, yeah, Genevieve. Her name, yeah, she speaks
Okay.
both English, French, and Spanish.
That's handy.
Yep.
Good.
Mm.
This
they-
is the
Go ahead.
This is the referee's room, the jury of appeal, which was also lined with camera or TV screens. They had, of course, cameras, all kinds of angles, just about any kind of angle you want out on the track and on the field. You could pull up camera views from anywhere, anytime, zoom in, zoom out, move forward, backward, still frame, anything you needed. We had our own ITO meeting room. These are some of the guys getting prepared to go out for their next session. This is kind of a couple of examples of our assignment schedules as ITOs. This was the 3rd of August morning session. In my case, I was covering first thing in the morning the B ring for the shot put, then shot put qualifying rounds. Then I went to the track for the round 1 of 400-meter hurdles, where I worked the second bend and the home straightaway. Later, round 1 of the women's 400 prelims, did the back straight into the second bend. And then later on, still the second bend, the steeplechase covering the water jump. The afternoon of the next day, or evening session, I should say, these were my assignments through that day. The end of the day, I was assigned to cover the start crew for the women's 100-meter final. And this is kind of a look at the roadmap for each session. They had one of these set up for each morning and each evening session throughout, approximate times for warm-ups for the event to be run or competed, and little designations for medal ceremonies. This map shows what areas are going to be actively used for that particular session. And these are the events with time chart, with estimates that basically end up calculating when the event starts and when it's scheduled to end, how long it'll take, so forth.
Lots of detail.
A lot of detail, yeah. These are some of the volunteer crews. They were very critical to keeping everything going. These are the basket crews. The the hurdle crew on this side. These guys were critical too. Each of them carried a very thick notebook, 3-ring notebook that had pages and pages of literally a minute by minute listing of everything that had to happen out on the competition area in each of the competition areas. And they were keeping track of what's going on and making sure everything was, all the people were in place where they needed to be, when they needed to be, and get them out there to do their job and then get back out of the way as soon as possible. So these guys were critical to keeping things going. This was our start crew. I focus a little bit on starters because I am a starter primarily, but this is our start crew, start referee Don Vickers. Jordi Roig from Spain was the international starter. Gordon Staines, Alan Bell, the chief starter, and Margaret Werrett. Gordon and Margaret were the recall starters.
Were those three British?
Yes, all of these guys, everybody here except Jordi were British.
Okay.
Jordi came in from Spain as the international member of the international starter panel to do this is some of the starting, which at the time Tom McTaggart was a member of the international starter panel as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Jordi got the assignment for the 2012 Olympics. This is Jordi up on the box, starting the first round of men's 100-meter preliminaries. And this was a setup for how the starters set themselves up. Recall starter here, start referee. Jordi is the starter. This is a 100-meter dash. And Alan Bell is the recall starter in this position. Margaret was the recall starter on the side of the track where I was with the camera taking this picture.
You could always distinguish Jordi because you hear him say, "On your marks."
Yeah.
On your marks.
Very nice guy, though.
Wonderful man.
I've worked with him a number of times over the
Great
years.
guy.
Great guy, yeah. These are quick shots of things I was able to sneak in while I was standing off in the tunnel entrance while I wasn't actively being assigned somewhere. This is the 200-meter mark after the start of the men's 1,500-meter final. Women's 5K first round and women's hammer throw qualifying round. This was a mini Cooper that was the little gadget they used to bring disc eye and javelins back and so forth. And you kind of had to watch out for it. It was running. And again, some other little beasties you had to be aware of and keep out of the way of during the meet. Don't ask me what it was. Some questionably action shots of me. One was sent to me by one of the international track photographers, Victor Saylor from New York, sent that to me. These two of me working horizontal jumps at different times. My son out in Eugene pulled off a screenshot off the television. Paperwork. ITOs had to do a lot of paperwork. Form of conformity. Any field event that used a laser measurement device had to have one of these sheets filled out with all this information on it, including the temperature and all of details about the event, about the device. And you had to do testing of the equipment before the event started And after the event was completed, for all the field events, I guess, except the high jump, which didn't use laser measurement. And this is an ITO report form. For every event that we were assigned to, we had to fill out a report form, including statistics about when the athletes departed the call room, when they arrived at this competition venue, when practice rounds started, finish of the practice trials, when the athletes were presented, start of the first round, start of the second round, so on through the finish time, and the total number of trials in the event. They kept a lot of detailed records. We had to make notes on the facilities and equipment, notes on the officials, any protests or items that needed to be recorded for field events, track events, any protests or incidents noted by the ITOs, any notes regarding the officials or the umpires, and any other notes on conduct of the event. We had to fill one of these forms out for every event, individual event we were assigned. And the decathletes on their traditional victory lap, having survived the decathlon. See over here is Ashton Eaton, who won the gold medal in London. On the way back to the hotel in the evening, there you'd often see groups like this jazz sextet out there playing. There were a lot of volunteers out along the pathways, showing people the way to get out of there, the quickest way to get to wherever they were going. And most evenings, we even got to see there's a group of performing bobbies. Yes. And finally, I was, and the officials in the hotel were very pleased that right next to the hotel, there was a pub that brewed its own beer, Tap East, which many of the British officials took advantage of, along with the occasional guest from the colonies. So that's a quick and dirty look at some of the ITO adventures in 2012.
That's a lot of fun to see, Eric. Very, very interesting.
Okay, I'm going to stop share. Good. It worked, Scott.
Yeah, I'm glad for that. Very glad for that.
Yeah, like I say, if you get a chance to do the Olympics, there is absolutely nothing like it as far as being a track and field official. It's a fantastic experience. You know, just watching the athletes compete. There were things like 96, I was an umpire in Atlanta, and in the men's 10K final, watching Haile Gebrselassie run his 10K as a distance runner. I just sat there on my little umpire chair on one turn with my jaw on the ground watching that race, because they went for almost 4 miles with 20 guys and whatever was in the final before the first guy started dropping off the back of the pack. And it was just, somebody would speed up, stretch the group out, then back off, and they'd cluster together, and just constant movement. And finally, Gebrselassie started pulling away. He ran the last 1,600 meters in something close to 4 minutes and ran his last 400 meters, I think, in 54, 55 seconds. His last 5K, the last half of the race, he ran a negative split and he ran his last 5K in a time that a few years before would have broken the world record for the 5K. And the guy who held that record, I heard later, was in the stadium. And he commented afterwards, he said, it's hard for me to believe I could have jumped in that race at the halfway point, run my world record race, and still lost.
Yeah, he was a remarkable talent.
It was a fabulous, but you'll see those kinds of competitions in the Olympic Games.
Sure.
Just fabulous.
Paul, you're on, aren't you? Paul?
Can you hear me?
Yep. We didn't have you on earlier. We had mentioned something here. So a quick comment here, Paul, and then we'll end. with that.
Okay. First off, thanks, Scott, for doing this. Really appreciate it. I know that there were five sets of all the people who were on tonight, and I don't know how many. I didn't count them up. But that's just like your typical Zooms throughout each year. 84 was great, especially since it was in my backyard, and fortunately, only 15 minutes away was my drive to get there. Also, it was an enjoyable for a young person at the time, with for me being in my early 40s, to have that wonderful opportunity that Eric and Lori Robinson and a few others have all said that if indeed you can preserve yourself over the next 4 years and have outstanding evaluations and have an opportunity to hone your skills at whatever particular event that you are doing, and hopefully with a little luck from the selection committee, have the opportunity to be at the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. For me, as a high school teacher, a track coach, and of course being mentored by Andy Bakshin and the rest of the Southern Cal Association, I know Hensley was on earlier and tried to get his screen up with probably some great pictures. He lived out in Westlake Village. There is many of the people that I had the opportunity to work with out of Southern Cal Association, but I sent some pictures. These are the Olympic torch, where I was asked to be a road marshal while it was coming in. Actually, it was really staffed by the volunteers, but had that opportunity to be as it came through my hometown of Pasadena, following Route 66 across the country. So there was a couple of these slides, and then of course I heard you when I went at the beginning of our tonight's Zoom, that you were asking the question of anybody in the audience if they knew who might have been the person of the celebrity that was coming through at the time. And of course they got it right by saying Willie Nelson right there, and that's on the corner of Foothill Boulevard, where it made a turn on to Fair Oaks and headed down to South Pass through Highland Park, all the way down Fremont into Los Angeles. So it was a great experience. I had a chance to do the 84 Olympic trials. Then it followed a couple weeks later while the torch was coming in, so I had to do the torch. And then as an alternate there for the 84 Olympics. I thank God for this wonderful opportunity. I hope everybody appreciates all the comments, all the hard work everybody said. I'm now up in the Pacific Northwest Association. It's great to see those pictures of some of my coworkers, with Bob and Carol Angenbach, with Carol Corum, with Paula Everdale, and Lori Robinson. And of course, I see I always stop at his house on the way to Eugene. I always see Dr. Kelly Rankin. We've become very good friends over the years. One of the
Yeah, unfortunately, Kelly could not make it tonight. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of good people, a lot of wonderful examples of top-notch officiating on this Zoom tonight. So we'll go ahead and end the Zoom. I wish to thank everyone for coming on, and it's been a delight to listen to you.
Thank you for organizing it.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been just a pleasure. And I've been recording this for anybody who would like a copy, or, people who weren't able to participate, they can share in this. So I'd like to thank everybody.